CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Hello, and welcome to the 6th episode of our show, Lighthouse. I'm Tracy Grimshaw, Josh, and this is my sister Jasmine. We're so glad you were able to join us this evening.
Lighthouse is our way of bringing God's light into your home during these challenging times. Later on in the episode, we'll be showing you the 3 top entries of our most recent competition, the Resurrection Skit. So make sure you don't miss out.
So Jazz, I'm sitting 2.5 meters from you. This is the furthest that I've sat from you in the previous 6 weeks.
I know. I'm thoroughly enjoying the space.
Look, distance makes the heart grow fonder, so just remember that. But look, I for one have thoroughly enjoyed the last 6 weeks. I've really enjoyed the family time, the endless Zoom meetings, the Disney Plus marathons, not to mention Mum's pancakes.
Not only Mum's pancakes, but Dad bringing home Whoppers every single afternoon.
I have to admit, even the trackies now at this point are feeling the pinch of the pandemic.
Oh dear.
But hey, let's not be negative Nancy. You've also done some pretty good stuff. Why don't you show them a few of the projects that you've been working on?
A few of my projects? Oh dear, I'm so unprepared.
Here we go.
Okay. So, what I've been working on during isolation. I've now learned to knit. This is all that I've done in all 6 weeks of isolation. I'm definitely no Mary G. However, practice makes perfect, so I'm on my way. That's the first thing. Second thing, let me flip back. I've started drawing. This is my turtle. This is a wide penguin that I drew. And this is a little Mexican man. So, I'm not sure why I drew that. Also, I've taken up cooking. This is a photo of a pad see ew that I made. Clearly I have no portion control during isolation, but that's another story. So
look,
we won't discuss that.
You have managed to literally regress to part preschooler, part teta, and part tunt during the last 6 weeks. That's quite the effort.
So thank you for that. However, I do need to explain how else was I meant to spend my time as I stress about being on the show today. Last time I did anything live, I said St. John Chrysostom and was teased about it for 3 years. So thanks to everyone that never let me forget that. Actually, who in their right mind thought you and I were appropriate candidates for this role? Mark?
Are you kidding? I am so excited to be here. If only someone was there to record our reactions upon receiving the text.
Pretty much anything. Except surgery. That's because surgery's not going to work.
We'd like to hear all the options. Well, your scans will be back any moment, and I'll have a
Well,
look.
let me tell you what you'll...
You raise me up. You raise me up. You.
They ask you how you are, you just say that you're fine, and you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Bringing light into your house. Bringing light into your house. Bringing light into your house. bringing light into your arms. What?
That's what you'll
I
see.
forgot my phone. I'm.
Oh dear. My reaction, I will admit, definitely was that and is accurate. However, in our next segment, the hymns team have done it once again, this time producing for us a contemporary rendition of Come All You Heavenly Hosts. May your ears come and host this heavenly music.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
I am floating. That was simply wonderful. Ah, thank you very much to the hymns team for that. All right, moving on to the reason why we're here this evening. We are lucky enough to have a woman of many talents and skills, Dr. Mirette Ibrahim, here this evening. Today's series is about the interesting characters and their stories that met Christ after he rose from the dead. Tonight, we'll be getting to know the women who went to Christ's tomb early in the morning. Mirette, thank you so much for joining us. How are you feeling during this pandemic as we begin to wind down from the isolation?
Oh, I had mixed feelings. I've come to kind of like the quiet, but you know, I've just started to perfect my homemade coffees with a little pattern on top. Oh, so nice. If we go back to work anytime soon, I'm afraid that's going to take a hit.
Oh dear. Yeah. I know, I understand. We bought a coffee machine, and so no, we're getting all professional. But is there anything in particular, as restrictions seem to calm down now, that you're going to miss during isolation?
I think, you know, like everyone, I've had the chance to read a little bit more, spend some more time with my family. You know, we've eliminated the whole travel to and from work.
Sure.
So that's been really nice.
Yep.
And, you know, my mornings are always really chaotic. I sort of get up in an absolute mess, quickly get dressed and leave, you know, the house in frantic state.
Yep.
So I'm glad that that's not happening.
Yeah,
so
for
I'm
sure.
really going to miss the quiet in the morning. But, you know, I'm kind
Absolutely.
of glad things are returning to normal a little.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Please.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so like Josh introduced, today we're just going to discuss the women who came to the tomb early in the morning to Christ's tomb. And specifically, I'm going to focus on Mary Magdalene as John does in his gospel. I think she can teach us a lot, and I'd like to draw on that a little bit today. So I guess the accounts of the Gospels are a little bit different. Do you guys know who the women were that came to the tomb?
Definitely know about Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
That's the main
And
one.
then there's just a few others that I
Yeah. So actually, Luke, they all kind of say a few different things, but
Yeah.
the gist of things is then there may not have been just 3 women. It's likely that there were more.
Okay.
And it's likely that it was a few of the women that ministered to Christ during his time on earth. One of them we know was Mary Magdalene. She's the one that's consistently mentioned in the Gospels. And we know Salome was there,
Yep.
Joanna was there, and these two were kind of a bit higher up in the political world, so they were helping Christ's ministry financially, from my understanding. And then there was Mary, the mother of Joseph, and obviously there were other women around that aren't mentioned, but these are the names that come up in the Gospels, so just for awareness. And do you know who it was that actually saw Christ first after his resurrection?
We go again for Mary.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. So it was Mary Magdalene, and I guess that's why we're really going to focus on her tonight. John doesn't actually mention any of the other women, and it's really interesting. Some of the fathers say that he only focused on Mary Magdalene because, yes, she was the first to see him, but also because she was the one that loved him most.
Right.
And so it was almost like, you know, returning the favour. Like,
Yeah.
this is the one you need to focus on. This is the one who truly captured Christ's heart, and he in turn captured her heart completely while he was alive.
Giving her the spotlight.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So she's such a historical figure, such a huge figure, and we'll see why it's so important that, you know, the account of John mentions that she saw him first, and how that's really important to us, especially women in the church. We always feel like,
Left
you know,
behind.
a little bit left behind. But it's really important for all of us, and
Yeah.
for any one of us that feels that, you know, we're neglected or we're a little bit behind the scenes or we don't have much of a role in the church. This story is for us, and Mary Magdalene specifically is for us, and she champions essentially the resurrection, the gospel of the resurrection to the whole world. She's the one that, you know, gives that news to the disciples.
I've always loved how Mary Magdalene represents. I mean, firstly, I'm so glad that gender kind of element is present, but also how she represents the worst sinners. You know, she was amongst the worst of the individuals that we met throughout in the Gospels, and you've shown me this other element of her that makes us so much more valuable to the church.
Yeah, exactly. And it's even mentioned in the account of the resurrection in one of the Gospels that, you know, Mary Magdalene was the one who saw him first, of whom, you know, Christ cast out, you know, the demons. So it's part of her identity. It's part of who she was. Her weakness, you know, was turned into strength. Christ completely restored her. And in restoring her, he let her, you know, witness the greatest miracle, the biggest news in all of history to date. He let her be the first to be a part of.
I have goosebumps.
So interestingly, just to, I guess, start off, the Gospel of John, we'll read chapter 20 in John, and we'll read just 1 to 18, and that's just the account that I want to focus on today. Obviously, I'm not going to focus on the other women, but know that there were other women there, but Mary's the one that stayed. She's the one that's mentioned in John. So I'm just going to read it out if that's okay with everyone. So just from chapter 20, verse 1, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb early, while it was still dark, and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. Then she ran and came to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him. Peter therefore went out and the other disciple and were going to the tomb. So they both ran together, and the other disciple outran Peter and came to the tomb first. And he, stooping down and looking in, saw the linen cloths lying there, yet he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb, and he saw the linen cloths lying there, and the handkerchief that had been around his head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded together in a place by itself. Then the other disciple, who came to the tomb first, went in also, and he saw and believed. For as they did not know the scripture, that he must rise again from the dead. Then the disciples went away again to their own homes, but Mary stood outside by the tomb, weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the tomb. And she saw 2 angels in white sitting, one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. Then they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "Because they have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." Now when she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, and did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" She, supposing him to be the gardener, said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him, "Rabboni," which is to say, Teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and that he had spoken these things to her. So it's a beautiful chapter. Wow. Yeah. And from the beginning, you can almost see this contest of love, like John runs to the tomb, he outruns Peter. It's like, no, I love him more. And then Peter goes into the tomb while John stays, no, I love him more. And then they leave and Mary stays, like, no, I love him more. And so she stays and they go. And you can imagine all the disciples are gathered and they're in fear. And it starts off, the chapter starts off with Mary going to the tomb early while it was still dark. So from, I guess, the Jewish calendars, from history and from everything that we know that this was a Sunday morning. So this was really early, it was still dark. Saturday was the day before, the Sabbath, so everyone was resting. So Mary was going to the tomb with the other women to anoint Christ. And so the tradition in the Jewish custom was to anoint the dead in burial. And it's kind of like just a tradition, a culture that they adhered to, and mostly just to avoid, the rapid stench that comes from death once the body starts to decompose. So they were ready. Early in the morning, dark, everyone's still asleep, doesn't matter, I'm going. I know I rested the day before, I have to go. And the beautiful thing is she still calls him my Lord. She still calls him Lord even in death. She followed him on the road to Golgotha. She followed him up on the cross. She saw him die. She knows he's dead, and that doesn't take away from his place in her heart. He completely has her over. She's so overcome with love for God. He is still her Lord in death, in life, doesn't matter. Okay, so that's such a beautiful thing. Like the fact, Mary's just such a beautiful character in this story. So we're going to follow her.
It makes me think of the metaphor of be a bride to Christ.
Yeah.
Mary Magdalene seems to be that perfect example of that.
Exactly. And I guess the same notion, you be the bride and you wait, just like the 5 wise virgins. They were ready. They were ready to meet him whenever he was coming. I'm here, I'm waiting for you, Lord. I love you with everything. The world's not going to take away from that. And that's Mary, essentially. Yeah. So the fact that she still calls him Lord in death is a beautiful thing, and we can take a lot from that already. But just, again, to give you a bit more of a context, in Jewish custom, women had no say, right? Whatever they said in court was inadmissible. Even if you got a congregation of women against one man, thing they said went. So nobody would believe them. The word of the one man would fly. So
I hate that.
Yeah. Oh God. Yes. I hate that so much. But that was the culture.
time,
That's
yeah.
the time. And you can see in all of the Gospels, women always ministered to Christ. Christ was the ultimate rule breaker. He was the ultimate, he was the first feminist. He was, you know, he turned culture and status and, you know, the status quo, he turned it on its head, you know, and he's the ultimate warrior or fighter for us, and for us who are feeling weak and for us who are feeling behind the scenes. Women were never spoken about in the Gospels to the extent that the disciples were, you know. The disciples always wrote everything. Even if the women wrote anything, you know, most of them didn't. So nothing was really, I guess the women didn't really have much of a say, as you can see. And so for Christ to appear to Mary first, that has such a bigger implication than we let off. So it's got two things really that I wanted to point to. The first one is it kind of points to the authenticity of the Gospels, you know?
Exactly right. They wouldn't write that if it wasn't.
Why would all these Jewish men write about a woman receiving the news first?
That makes it almost more unbelievable.
Exactly. Why would they want to write this? You can imagine, you know, them cringing like, oh, but it really happened. Oh, but I have to write it.
I could write that it was John that saw it.
And they would be fighting envy and perhaps some jealousy as well. Who knows, so to speak.
Exactly.
but
like,
who knows?
And it's just, I think that's a huge argument for our Gospels and what we believe in, because why would they? Why would they write it if it didn't happen? That's the last thing they wanted to do, especially in that time. And the second point, so I guess the second thing is that reminder that we discussed, that the Messiah turns the whole system on its head. He has come to, you know, completely bring about the dignity of women and the dignity of those that were not seen or less seen or in the backgrounds, you know. Women were always there, they always ministered, they were always in the background, they were constantly loving, serving, doing whatever it is that needed to be done, barely any mentioned. Yeah. And you see Christ spend so much time with women, he brought them up to a level that they were never at, okay? And this is the ultimate test of that. There were a few more points I wanted to make just about that before we move on specifically to Mary. So N.T. Wright, he's a New Testament scholar, beautiful writer. So he has said, the first person to be commissioned to take the news of the resurrection of Jesus to others is Mary Magdalene. Now that is so counterintuitive in the ancient world, in the ancient Jewish world, in the ancient pagan world. And this is God choosing what is weak to shame the strong. And it seems to me that in the resurrection, there is a radical re-evaluation of the role of women. And I think it is so important for us today to read that and be filled with such hope and promise of our role in this world. Jazz, if you're anything like me, you really struggle with being a woman and trying to find purpose. And I guess it's really hard to try and think what my purpose is, and does God even have a purpose for me? No, you know, I can't serve in this way, or I can't do this way, or I can't do this, you know, like the men. But no, God today, Christ today in this chapter is telling us, you have, you know, you are my child, regardless of gender, regardless of status, regardless of background. And you have a role in my kingdom. You have a role for my kingdom. He doesn't need us to do anything. But he has lifted us up to feel like we are true pioneers for something so big. So I think this chapter not only speaks to the women, I'm trying to, I think it involves everyone that feels like they're marginalized, everyone that feels like they don't really fit into a specific role or a specific service. You know, even if it's just on a smaller scale at church, you think, oh, you know, everybody's going into Sunday school. Everybody's going into Sunday school. I can't do Sunday school. I can't speak. I don't really like kids. I don't really, whatever it is. That's not it. You know, your purpose does not have to be Sunday school. Your purpose is not one specific service. Your purpose is to love Christ completely and wholeheartedly like Mary did. And God will fix the rest. He will use you in a way that you don't even realize is coming.
So empowering. That's the first word that comes to my mind. It's, I'm feeling one thing, and next, I'm feeling special. I'm feeling empowered. I'm feeling like I can do things, and gender has nothing to do with it. I'm a woman, you're a man. Cool, let's get on with life. Like, it's so special that.
But that's Christ. And the sad thing is this: the world makes us feel differently, and everyone around you makes you feel there is a certain mold you have to fit. And it's not just within the church, it's everywhere. It's society, it's the whole world. You have to fit a certain mold. And I don't think I was so passionate about this until I became a mum. And then the mums on Instagram, there's a mold. If you don't fit that mold, it's like, well, does your kid really love you? Well, actually, yes, she does.
Wow.
So, this is Christ. Christ is not here for the mold. Christ is here to make you feel special and empowered, and you are so loved. And he fashioned us and created us for a purpose and with intent, like he actually took the time to make me. I have to be important, right?
Yeah.
So that is Christ. And if we feel anything other than that, if we feel less, that's the world. And that's not how we're supposed to feel. And Mary is, honestly, just look to her when you're feeling the opposite, because she had every reason to feel less empowered. She had every reason to kind of, hide away in the corner. The other Gospels mention that she went and told the disciples, and they're like, oh, this is nonsense.
Yeah.
Like that, they didn't believe her. Nobody believed her. And yet here she is, and we still talk about her today.
Absolutely.
So I think, she's perfect for that, because if she had let her sin and her past hold her down, there's no way she would be the first to see Christ.
Mm-hmm.
She had every reason to be like a timid or a shy sort of
Exactly.
love God from afar.
Exactly.
And I love him, he healed me, and I'm just going to stay over here and,
Exactly.
and love him from here. But she was courageous in her love. She ran to the tomb early morning and then ran back to the disciples saying this crazy news. Yeah. And yet she was courageous through it all.
Exactly. It's just like, if you think about the Samaritan woman as well, she met Christ at the well. He told her simply her past. And she's like, oh my God, I met the Messiah. It's him. He knows everything about me. And she went and spread the news.
Yeah.
And, being in her position, you'd be like, oh, but you just kind of text it to someone.
Exposed me.
We're always so shy to talk about the resurrection. We're always so shy to talk about who I am and how Christian I really am. I'll just be a little bit of a Christian. But no, Christ has empowered us so much that it shouldn't matter what the world says. It shouldn't matter what the world thinks of us, because he has raised us to a level of importance and of value in his sight. And I think that's the tragedy. We don't see that in ourselves. Because I think we need to look to Mary almost like, one of our role models. Man, woman, whoever you are. I think Mary is great in showing us that no matter where you came from, no matter what your past, no matter what your talents, there's a place for you. And if you love him enough, you get to see him. And so just for the last little bit, I guess I just want to talk about what we can learn from Mary specifically, and how we can kind of emulate her love in our lives. So do you guys think, what do you think we can learn from her? Is there anything that stands out about Mary that you resonate most with?
For me, it's sure. It's the way that her change was so sudden and transformative that she was able to maintain that spiritual high from the moment that the demons left her. Yeah. She didn't enter lukewarmness. Yeah. She didn't become re-tempted, with this newfound clean slate. Yeah. She remained, so pure and wonderful till the very end. Yeah. And so that's I think that shows great sustainability and endurance. And that's, I think, a trait that I definitely suffer with. I have, that's it. This is the new year, Easter week, and then life comes back. So keeping it, I think, is something that I really find inspiring about her.
It's a beautiful thing that you've mentioned, like the fact that she was so fervent in her love and that didn't waver. I think that's huge. And I honestly think it just comes down to her love and how much she gave Christ and how much she let him take her over. If you guys are all following the Bible plan that we're doing on the Bible app, we're actually studying the book of John at the moment, so it's a bit fitting. And the second chapter talks about, the wedding. It talks about the wedding of Cana and Christ's first miracle. And the beautiful thing is that I've never noticed before reading this chapter for another time, was the servants and their role in this miracle. Christ could have easily done that on his own. He didn't need the servants. He didn't need them to fill the water pots. He didn't need the water. He didn't need any of that. But he, in his love, let them partake of the miracle. And not only partake, but bring it to life, bring it to the master, be first-hand witnesses of the very first miracle. But the interesting thing about the servants is when they were asked to fill up the water pots with water, they not only filled it up, but they filled it up to their brim. They didn't ask questions. They didn't whinge. They didn't say, this is useless. He wants wine. Why are we doing water? It doesn't make sense. No, they did as they're told. And not only that, they went above and beyond. Christ asks us to love him. That is the simplicity of it all. He asks for our hearts, and that's all he wants. And then I always do that, 10% of the way. And that's, I feel, why we're constantly going up and down in our struggles. Our hearts are not completely with him. You think about, you say bride and bridegroom, and I think that's a perfect analogy because that's our relationship with Christ. And if we're not looking at him as our bridegroom, we're never really gonna, do anything for him or sacrifice for him or love him enough to the point that we wait and we wait and we wait till we see his resurrection. And I think if you look at it from that point of view, if you're truly married to your bridegroom, if you've truly given them your heart, there is nothing that they will ask and you'll say no. There is no complaint in the world. There is no task too big. There is nothing. You meet these people that are just so full of love for Christ. They see Christ in everyone. Even when they're talking to you, it's like, thank God, Christ is here. Christ is here. Christ is like, okay, I get it. I'm not there. I understand. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's something that we can aspire to. But really, all he's asking for is our hearts. And why Mary saw him first was because she gave him her heart completely. And she gave it to him at the point where she was most broken, where she was possessed by demons, and he healed her. He cast them out. He saw her, and in turn, she could not help but love him in return. She couldn't help but give him everything. This one man that finally showed her some love, and she clung to him, to the end. And that's why she was rewarded with something so great. So just a bit more about her love. I guess a few of the fathers say really beautiful things about this encounter and why she waited and why she sat there and she wept. And she wept and she waited and she persisted in prayer. She persisted in her waiting for Christ. And I guess that's what we need to do with Christ. We need to persist. We need to wait till we see him. We need to wait till he turns around and says, why are you weeping? Who do you want to see? And then he comes and comforts us and calls us by name. And that's exactly what he did. He called her Mary. He didn't say woman like he always does in the gospel. He said Mary. And she was only because of her love. So I think we really need to look at her love. I'll just read from a couple of the fathers. So Gregory the Great, on the notion of Mary staying and her love, he says, Mary Magdalene, who had been a sinner in the city, loved the truth and so washed away with her tears the stains of her wickedness. Her sins had kept her cold, but afterwards she burned with an irresistible love. We must consider this woman's state of mind, whose great force of love inflamed her. When even the disciples departed, she did not depart. She looked for him whom she had not found, but it is not enough for a lover to have looked once, because the force of love intensifies the effort of the search. She looked for him a first time and found nothing. She persevered in seeking, and that is why she found him. As her unfulfilled desires increased, they took possession of what they found. Holy desires, as I have told you before, increase by delay in their fulfillment. If delay causes them to fail, they were not desires. This was Mary's kind of love. As she turned a second time, she had already looked Let us see the result of her search, which had been redoubled by the power of love. So it's exactly like you were saying before to Jazz, distance does make the heart grow fonder. And she had been away from Christ, away from her love for far too long. He died in front of her. She had to wait. She had to wait the Sabbath.
2 days.
And now Sunday morning, it's like, that's enough. Like, I need him. And I think that's a really interesting point, because you think, oh, he's right there. How do you not recognize him? And the fathers say something really beautiful. They mention that there was a little bit of doubt, you know, like she saw the angels. And the other Gospels tell us that the angels told her, why are you seeking the living among the dead? He's not here. And she doubted a little bit. And Gregory the Great says, because she loved and doubted, she saw and did not recognize him. Her love revealed him to her, and her doubt prevented her from knowing him. I thought that was really nice, because we also come to Christ in the same way. And sometimes we don't recognize him working in our lives. Sometimes we don't recognize the miracles. We don't recognize him. We don't recognize the plans. And I think that comes from our doubt. We kind of pray, but half-heartedly. We're kind of saying, I don't think you can do this. I don't think this is you. But we love him.
Yeah.
And so in our love, or in her love, she got to see him. But unfortunately, her doubt pushed her back a little bit. And the other beautiful thing that is nice to contemplate on is she was looking for the living among the dead, right? She was looking for a different Christ. She was looking for a human Christ, you know, a dead Christ. She was looking for something else, not the Christ that is now resurrected. And I think that's a really good point for us to look into as well, because sometimes we look for Christ in the wrong places. Sometimes we look for a different Christ to the one we know. And sometimes we make him into something that is not the true Christ. You know, like there's a really good analogy that I read once where we make Christ into like this genie in a bottle, you know? 3 wishes, what I want, when I want them, I will call upon you, you will deliver. That's our relationship. Other people, you know, Christ is not just the miracle worker or the giver. He's just there as a comfort. You know, when I'm sad, I'll come to you. When everyone else has left me, I'll come to you. You know, and I think we make this Christ different. And so we need to look at Christ as he is, the risen Lord today, coming to Mary, who in her love got to see him, because of her fervent love got to see him first, and because of how much she was completely overcome by him, she got to deliver the greatest news in all of history to the disciples. So I think we can learn a lot from Mary, and I hope, you know, this has helped some people. I know reading about her has definitely helped me. I just want to leave you with one verse from Jeremiah, and I think it sums up exactly Mary in one verse and how I think we can emulate that love in our lives and in our prayers. Jeremiah 29:13, and you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. And that is exactly what Mary did, and that's exactly what we can try and do. We need to truly, truly be so overcome by Christ, be so in love with Christ that we don't stop. We don't stop till we find the risen Lord and we search for him, and he'll come to us just like he came to Mary. And glory be to God forever. Amen.
Glory be to God. Thank you so much, Mirette. That in particularly, like with the whole empowering of women, resonated with me. Sometimes, unfortunately, I might feel second class, you know, and so the fact that Christ appeared to her first is really special, and just to, you know, emulate that love that she had for Christ, you know, perfect role model. So thank you. You've brought a whole new perspective.
Classes with Christ,
Yeah, exactly right. No, it's a whole new perspective that I never even thought of. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having
and
me.
for enlightening that. What was I saying? If you have any questions, please remember to send them through to Slido, slide.do.
Yes, I've just received them here.
Sure, there's a few of them.
We have a few questions coming through now.
So the code is Lighthouse. Give us a call, or you can give us a call on 0416 551 292.
Wonderful. Right. Okay, so perhaps we'll just take 2 now, 2 Slido questions that have come through. So the first one that came through was, how do we come out of a spiritual low to overcome doubt and be more fully and to more fully and fervently love God?
Yeah, I think that's a really nice question, and I think that's something we all struggle with at some point, because You know, Mary had Christ there, and I think the visual aspect is beautiful, but now we've got the Holy Spirit, so we can still be filled with the same love. But how? And I guess you can't really love someone without truly knowing them. You know, you can't dive into a relationship. You can't get married to someone without knowing them. And honestly, it's the perfect analogy, because I think this is exactly the same. How do I get to really know Christ? How do I get to know this Christ, the living Christ that appeared to Mary Magdalene? I think it starts with reading. We really need to read. And Pope Kyrillos, if you've read Abuna Dan's book, or if you've read some quotes on him, he emphasized the power of reading and how important that is in our lives. We just need to read. We need to read and get to know him. Even if I just pick up, if I've never started, pick up the Bible and start reading and try and see who Christ was in the Gospels. Try and see who the others said that Christ was in the Bible. And I think you need to start by reading both the Bible and something in conjunction with it, to try and understand it with a bit more depth. But just like anything, it's a process. And I can't, like I said, you can't marry someone after meeting them. You have to get to know them. And that's the way we need to approach Christ. We will learn about him every single day. And there's no timeline. You know, our end is when we die. So we've got from now to when we die to get to know him, truly know him. So we start by reading. You start by reading, maybe start the Bible with something else. Talk to people, pray, and ask for enlightenment. The importance of quiet time is huge, and we need to appreciate that in our lives and actually take the time to sit with God in the quiet without the distraction and try and get to know him one-on-one, right? So that's the whole idea. And actually, just before we started, someone was telling us about Paul's ministry and how actually between the time that he was converted to the beginning of his ministry was 14 years. 14 years spent to get to know the God that he's about to preach about. So I think we can't take quiet time lightly. It's super important to spend that one-on-one time with God in reading, in prayer, mix it up, get to know him at your level and the way you want to know him personally, and he'll reveal himself to you.
Thank you for that. And the second question that we have here is, thank you for the talk, Mirette. You're so inspiring. When I'm having a spiritually high day, I feel loved by God, but if I'm not, I don't. How do I fight this?
Yeah, this is really, really hard. And I think, you know, a lot of us turn around at some point, whether something really bad's happened or I've specifically requested this one thing that I know is good for me, I know, and I don't get it. And a lot of the time we feel let down by God and we feel, where was he? You know, where were you when I was crying out? You know, you weren't there during my most painful period. You weren't there, you didn't hear me, you didn't give me anything, you didn't shower me with love. Where were you? And we always feel that when we're at our lows, because that's how the devil attacks us. When in honestly, actually, I'm going to quote a movie line, I'm sorry, it's a Christian movie. The movie The Shack, it's a beautiful movie, it's super depressing, but it's a lovely movie, and it basically follows a guy's journey of healing and his rediscovery of his faith after his daughter is murdered. And so he meets God, and he asks him this question. He's like, where were you when my daughter was being murdered, when she was crying out in pain? And God says to him, you couldn't see me through your pain. He said to him, your pain basically blinded you from me. And I think that's what happens with us. All we can see is us. We can only see our pain. We can only see our desires and our needs and what I'm not getting and what I'm not receiving and how I'm not loved. And that's all we see. We only see ourselves. We never focus on Christ in those dark times. And I think that's the pivotal shift that we need to make in our outlook. It's so hard to not see your pain. It's so hard. But I think the best thing at that point is to focus on the cross, right? The ultimate suffering, and the ultimate suffering because of love. Like, he loved us that much. He could have died any other way. He could have chosen any other time in history and died a civil way, but no. He died on the cross, and he died showing us just how much he loves us and just how much he sacrificed for us. And if I focus on the cross, how can I focus on my pain? What is my pain in light of the cross? And I think that's the point where we need to shift our focus during those lows. As hard as it is to take the focus away from ourselves, we need to focus back on the cross and look at Christ. And if that's all I do, if I just sit in front of the cross during those tough times, I will get through. God will show me himself at the end.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Right.
We do have a phone call for you.
Oh, yep.
So, hi, can I ask who's calling?
Oh, hi, Debbie. It's Mum. Could you just go to Jay? Can you please unstack the dishwasher and reload it? Now, Josh has to take out the rubbish.
Okay, Mum. Okay, we'll be home soon.
Good night. Where are you anyway?
Filming for CYC. We're filming Lighthouse. Are you not watching us? Mum?
Grace is calling me. Bye.
Oh.
Bye, Mum. Thank you so
Clearly
much.
she was not watching. Okay, so moving on.
I think that's all the time we have for Mirette.
Thank you so much,
You're
Mirette,
very
for your
welcome.
talk.
Thank you, Mirette. Thank you so
for
much.
having me.
No,
Thank you,
our
guys.
pleasure. So, as many of you know, St. Mark's has a long history of producing very amazing skits and then others that have not been so amazing. So tonight concludes the Resurrection Skit competition that we've been running, and I'd like to firstly thank everybody who has entered the competition and submitted an entry. It was really hard to narrow it down to just 3. We have 3 entries to show you tonight, however. The first comes from a place called Kellyville. Do you know where that is, Joshua?
I do believe they are a member state of the United Nations.
Lovely. So this video is produced by Karen Zaki and Rebecca Cosman. The second is by our very own Hollywood star, Sam Hanna, playing himself. And then the third is just, well, Dan Mawad, and we're not really sure what's going on in it. So we'll see. So the first one is is Karen Zaki and Rebecca Cosman.
3 days.
Next!
Happy Easter!
Happy Easter.
Next!
Hey!
Happy, oh, Jesus.
Hey!
Hi, I'm
You?
Jesus, how are you? Happy Easter.
I'm
Did you want a
Jesus.
candy?
What? You're handing out candy?
Yeah, that's how we keep them entertained. Keep them coming back for next Easter, you know?
Keep them coming back?
Yeah.
But I died and rose from the dead, like...
Gets a bit repetitive, year in, year out, same psalm, same gospel, you know, same hooked on the wall. It's all pretty much the same.
What do you mean?
It was 2,000 years ago. Just move along, you know, give you candy, come back next year to get your candy.
But
it's new, hip.
I died.
And you're risen. Good job.
Yeah.
Happy Easter.
Good job. What? What is this? No, wait. I died and rose so that you could have the life that you have. Like,
look, thank you and all. Enjoy the candy. I've got one aina banar that I need to finish. He's
What?
just stole that I stole from you. Just
stole
fit
from
in with Jesus for me, and I'll see you after dinner.
What? I thought my resurrection was supposed to change you for the rest of your life. Turns out I only changed it for a day.
This is like an E.T. moment. E.T. Oh. Wait, I
Yeah, my leg is gone!
Oh.
What a very funny way to represent a very powerful meaning. So thank you, Karen.
Packs a punch, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you, guys. That was fantastic. So we'll move on to our second video, which is by Sam Hanna, and it's called Back to the Future.
Hey, who are you? How you going? Khiram, welcome. I'm actually you from the future. I'm you in April 2020. That's pretty cool. So you're here to tell me what happens in the future? Yeah, you can say that. I'm actually not allowed to tell you what happens. I can just sort of allude to it. Okay, cool. Tell me what's gonna happen. It's good, yeah. It gets really good. What's happening now? What's happening now in the world? We've been going through the bushfires. The what? The bushfires. You remember the bushfires? The ones we've been going through. It's been crazy. You remember? Oh yeah. Bushfires. Definitely not the hallmark of 2020. Man, I thought that'd be for sure. Yeah, you'd think. Yeah, you'd think. Yeah. But man, we had plans to lose weight. What happened to you? Yeah. No, it's still going ahead. It's definitely still going ahead. But if I were you, I'd maybe sort of not pay for gym membership anymore. Just stop your membership because it's not any time anymore. It's actually no time. But you see what happened there. Didn't we want to look good for the resurrection liturgy? For what? You know, the resurrection liturgy, Easter, the open, O King, that one. Resurrection liturgy. Yeah. Don't worry about it. I don't think you'll be making it to the resurrection liturgy. Let's just say that. You stumble and start sitting with a wolf, and you're gonna make it to the resurrection liturgy. Don't worry about the resurrection. Don't worry about it. When was the last time you went shopping? You need... we know our digestive system. You're going to need toilet paper. And a lot of it. My advice, you go in, you get toilet paper, and you get out. Don't talk to anyone, alright? Or else you end up on Facebook, alright? Don't talk to anyone. You'll develop this new interest in, tigers and Gogglebox. You don't have to move from your couch to get a confession. But yeah, that's all the negatives. That's all the bad things. How about I tell you about the good? Honestly, the way that you're putting it right now, it doesn't sound like there's any good news in the world. The good news is Christ has risen. Christ has risen? Oh, like if the whole world is in shambles and everything's upside down, what does that mean to me? That's the good news, because that's the only news. That's the only news that you need at the moment. You'll find that as the future moves on, that there are so many things out of your control, and there are so many things you used to put your trust in that at the moment you can't anymore. But there's only one thing that continues to be something you can put your trust in, and that's the joy of the resurrection, a joy that you've never witnessed before, and that's the good news. But seriously, couldn't lose like a kilo.
Oh, look, I was absolutely suspended in disbelief there. Time travel, that was all fine, believed everything, until he mentioned that he had plans to lose weight. That I couldn't believe, sorry. That's something that I just don't think would ever happen, so... Anyway,
sad. Okay.
The final one.
All right, thank you, Sam, for your entry. And we'll go on to our third and final entry, which is by Dan Mawad. And again, as I mentioned, no one's really sure what's going on.
I'm so tired. Hate waking up. What's the time? What am I going to do today? I might just go to the bathroom. Oh, but there's no toilet paper. I need to go to the shops and get toilet paper, don't I? Wait, hold on a second. Am I hearing my own voice? Is that in my head or out loud? Wait, I need to check. Okay, I'm just going to speak out loud because this is too weird. I'm going to go to the shops and see if there's any toilet paper left. What else can I do? I guess I can call my 2 close friends, Seb and Yunan, and see if they want to do something. I always knew they were fake anyway. Jeez, who ever thought we couldn't have toilet paper anymore? I don't have that anymore. I don't have friends anymore, which I always thought I'd have. So bored. You know what? I might actually do a skit for the Lighthouse youth meeting. But where can I get an idea for a skit from? I'm gonna call Shen. Hey Shen. Yeah, bro, I'm just so bored, man. I actually thought I might do a skit for Lighthouse. Hey, do you have any like really funny ideas for a skit? Yeah, Shen. I'll let you know if I end up using that idea. Nah, it's good. It's good. Okay. Sorry, bro. Bye. Out of toilet paper. Out of friends. Shen's out of jokes. It's always been like that. What else can I do? Oh! Is there anything in life that's certain? Like, who would have thought I wouldn't even be able to go outside? Who would have thought, you know, I won't see like all my friends? Who would have thought there'll be no toilet paper? Who would have thought I wouldn't be able to go to the gym? Who would have thought that I'd be worried about getting sick every corner I turn? It just feels like nothing's for sure. Is there anything in life that's for sure and certain?
So I definitely would say that was an appropriate title. I don't know what happened in that, but thank you, Dan Mawad, for your attempt.
It was so profound and deep. I'm speechless. Oh, thank you for all the participants. So, voting now. It's up to you guys. Please go to Slido, slide.do, and enter the codename skitcomp. One word. You'll be able to submit your votes there. We'll be posting these videos up on our Instagram and Facebook pages if you'd like to review them. And voting is open for a week. They end next Thursday at midnight. Okay, moving on. We have time for one phone call to be placed as a question to Mirette.
Okay, we have a phone call from Sandra. Can you hear us, Sandra?
Hi, guys.
Hi.
How are you?
Very well. How are you going?
I'm good. Hi, Mirette.
Hi, Sandra. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for the talk. It was great. It was so nice to see how much Mary Magdalene loved Jesus. And just like, I don't know, just like how much she had that connection with Jesus.
Yeah.
I guess I just wanted to ask, with women or with like girls, with us trying to fit in the church, and even us kind of giving lessons to the girls that we teach, what's our best advice at us telling them how to find their place in church or with Christ?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think all of us female servants have struggled with delivering a message to our female, class attendees, and we always struggle with that. How do you find your place in the church? How do you find your service? And I think there's no real clear-cut answer, and I think we search for our role and our purpose, not just in church, but in life in general, for most of our lives. And it's very hard to see, you know, how many people feel that they've had the calling for something specific quite early on, and I'm still kind of stuck. I don't know what I want to do. But that's not our role as servants. That's not our role as leaders. And I think that's what we need to firstly put ourselves in. We are leaders. We are loved. We have, you know, we have a status in Christ's eyes, and we've got a role. And He's asked us to be on this earth for a reason, and I need to find that reason. But my primary reason, apart from the calling or whatever I feel like I'm set out to do, is to love Him and to give Him my heart. He will reveal the rest. And I think you need to kind of use your life as an example to shed light on that. How many times have you chosen something and then prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, and then God completely diverted that to something completely different that you would never have thought that was going to be you? And you can use anything in your life as an example. You know, who you ended up marrying, what you ended up doing as a job, what you ended up studying, you know, so many things that God completely diverts our attention from what we want and what we need to do and what we're called to do to Him. And that's where our focus needs to be. Everything else will fall into place. Even if I'm never given a service, if I never really feel like I fit into a community, if I love Him, I will be spreading that love wherever I go. And that's what I need to do. Johnny, I always reference this in most talks. Johnny gave a talk to us back when I was serving pre-servants a few years ago, and he was talking about mission work, and he was talking about this whole notion of finding what I'm set out to do in mission. And he says, it doesn't matter, but I need to be faithful in my role in where this person meets Christ. So it might take, you know, Jasmine 10 steps before she meets Christ, and she meets me at step number 2. I need to be a faithful step number 2 so she can make it to tile number 3. That's my role. I don't need to focus on the goal. I don't need to focus on her goal. What she does with her relationship with Christ doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that I've completely fulfilled my role in being that faithful tile, that faithful person that she's met. I can't be faithful unless I'm completely taken over by God's love. It's completely taken over me that I just spread it everywhere I go. And there are people you'll meet that are just like that just can't help but talk about God and talk about His love and shed love wherever they go. That needs to be me. If I'm filled with love, they'll see the love of Christ in me, and they'll have this desire and this yearning to get to know Him to the level that I know Him. And that's the only thing I need to focus on. I hope that answers the question.
Alrighty, well, massive thank you to you,
very
Mirette,
welcome.
for joining us tonight.
Mirette.
And I definitely know that we've all learned something from your talk that we can start implementing from now until next Easter, when we're going to need to hear it again. Thank you. And thank you to everyone around the world who's tuned in tonight with us on Lighthouse. Don't forget to tune in again next week.
And thank you for bringing God's light into your house.
I'm Jasmine.
And I'm Josh.
And you've been watching Lighthouse. Good night.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Now I See on CYC.
People finding Christ.
The desire of God to find His people.
Motives of change.
She told me a lot about the church, and I was like, this is interesting to me, you know, like I was actually rather keen on knowing all about it.
Many experiences.
Everything is planned, everything is according to God's will, in His time.
Turning points.
My baptism and my being reborn.
Of Now I See on CYC, I'm Anna Choi.
Now I See, a new